Before I settled in for the evening, I wanted to take just a couple moments and kind of talk about the conflict utility, the type of file that you can use as an input, and also show the different reporting layouts that you can have. I didn't get to show that earlier, but I went ahead and put that in. So I'll start with the reporting layouts first. Now, these layouts you can define these in the localization files. And basically how it works is whenever data, like let's say a plugin being data is going to be reported on, there is a common structure that is built up that holds specific fields. And in the localization files, in the report, like in the reporting constructs, or in the view, the toggle view, the TVW constructs, you specify the column header, which is what you see in the column, and then you specify the field that you want to show in that column. And then, once again, the libraries take that information. It says, okay, this is the construct you want to use. This is the data, and I'm going to pull the fields out of that data, and then I'm going to build that report. And that's all done in the libraries. That's why it makes it pretty quick and, fairly simple. But let me show you this right here. So this is this is what I had showed, this is what was shown in the previous video, and you can see the column. Well, I have, it's called toggling the view, and I've mapped it to it's in the key maps, which is included with the package, and it maps it to F5. So in this particular list view, if I press F5, you see the bar down here? So if I press F5, do you see how the bar changed? So what it did, it moved to the next view. And you can see that different data is displayed. And you can left justify this data if you want. Some of it's centered. A lot of this was just where I was going in trying to say, okay, this is the functionality I want to have. Now let me throw it together. And let me show you another view. See, here's another view which shows the type of record it is, the type of plugin it is, the flags. It gives you the size, record count, versions, things like that. So that's and that will remain with the session. So if you exit out and go back in, it remembers that particular version. Now some reports, this report is different than, let's say, this. If you want to see like plugin masters, this shows that information, but this is in an RPT record. This is an RPT, a report record, where this is in a TVW record or toggle view. And this allows me to cycle through a list of really, in a sense, it's like a reporting view. It just allows me to toggle through a list of these reporting constructs, and then showing more or less data. And that way you can kind of tailor it to what you want to look for. And then if you want a particular view, you can always go into the application and set that as, I've got 0, which is the very first view, as the default view. And that's in I think that's in that load orders library, the TVW record in the localizations. The other thing I wanted to show you is the file. There is a file. Let me load it up real quick. So in the library, in the load order library, whenever you open a load order, it basically can deconstruct certain types of plugin names, or you could call them records, or load order records if you want to call them that. These are what mine look like, and tabs and everything really don't matter, but these are the sections that gets ignored, comments get ignored. So, for example, if you had a comment like, this, that would be ignored. Anything that begins with the brace is ignored. I don't think there's any plugins that do that. But this is the format that my application, the Mod Helper application, that GUI interface I was talking about, the interface for all these library calls. Well, this is the format I use. And you don't have to use this format because it actually allows multiple formats. It's kind of like what I'm showing you now. So it looks for flags, the plugin flags, one being that it is active. So 1 and 0 that's a bit number 0 or 1 or 0 is the active flag. And I believe 40 means that the fourth bit over here, I believe in the 40, in the hex 40, and I forget which bit number that is. See, it's probably, let's see, 4, 6, or 7, seventh bit maybe. That tells it that it's a file name. But you can also send it this. You can also send it just that. That's just the raw file name. And it will assume that, now depending on the game, it will assume that that is not active, whereas this would be active. So you have, now this is for Fallout 4, so an asterisk in front of it would be active, and then if the asterisk wasn't there, then that's inactive. And that points to this could point to whichever folder it's in. Of course, this happens to be in the game folder, the install folder, so that's where it points to. You can also do this. This is also valid. And if you're using Fallout 4 or Skyrim, then I believe that's going to apply. So that says that it's active. That says that it's inactive. Now, if there is no path in front of the plugin, it will automatically assume that it is a base game, that it is the actual load order for the game, the official load order. And it will put that. It'll actually, because this right here is actually the install folder for the game. And that's taken from the registry. So it actually reads the registry where the game is installed. So it should work for GOG and it should work for the Steam version too. This should also work. So you should be able to have, let's go ahead and drop this off because that's another valid option. And then the deconstructor also should allow this. Now, I haven't tested all of these. So it should allow something like this. Well, let's get the Fallout 4 on here. So let's get this. So it should allow a 1 equals for active, or it should allow a 0 equals for active. And the same would apply back here. So if you have the active back here, so that format should apply. And then the final format that I did was this format here. So I seen this in a few, whoops, I think I got to put it here. That would be active. And this would be inactive. So you can pass different file names, literally different file names to the as a load order. The only thing is I don't use Vortex and I don't use Mod Organizer 2. Now these are all 32-bit apps, so they should work on a 32-bit, 64-bit system, but it is compiled under Windows 11. So, and it does require the Net Frameworks 4.8, or at least that's what I compiled it under. So I'm not sure how to get the plugin list from those particular, let me go ahead and move this. I'm not sure how to get those, let me make sure I can do this. I'm not sure if that was where you couldn't see it, but these are all the formats it should handle, including mine. So if you need to add this one to the list because it'll actually work with the format that I use. It'll actually deconstruct it. So it'll actually deconstruct that into active, non-active. So that's kind of like the different formats. So it should work with a lot of different mod managers, maybe a lot of different load orders. Let me go ahead and get rid of that. Don't want to save it. It should work with a lot of them. Like I say, I don't use Vortex and I don't use Mod Organizer too, so I'm not sure how you would get a list to the actual folders, the extracted folders that contain the actual plugin. So maybe if somebody could let me know, maybe post or something in the comment to let me know how I could do that, or maybe how that's done. I can work that into the code. But other than that, that pretty much kind of wraps up this particular application. It's just like I say, this is just the basic construct. Later on, I'll visit it again and maybe add some things to it, especially like user definable buttons. I've got an idea how I want to do that. I've got that worked out, so it should be incredibly easy to add. It should take very very few lines of code to do that. And yeah, that should just about do it for that. And then let's see, Thursday. Let's see, tomorrow I've got a few things I need to do, and then I might start work. I might lay out the next one. One I'm gonna have to put off because one's gonna be it's gonna require doing a little bit of code comparison. So I'm gonna work out. I've got some new techniques I want to work out on that, or some techniques I've never done before that I want to work out. And it's still gonna use the same interface, still everything. It's always gonna use this because it really cuts development time down by an enormous amount, and it also allows whoever goes in, if they want to update the code or modify the code, it gives them access to the libraries that that will let them do a lot of different things. Everything my main application does is done. It's the same libraries. It's all the same thing. It's just I throw up, instead of having this kind of thing thrown up as a report, it's actually thrown up, over there in a list view. And these reports, libraries, it's all work in progress, so it all changes as I go, as I clean it up. When I originally did it, I wrote a lot of the reporting, a lot of the different reports. You can call them forms if you want. A lot of those were inclusive to the Mod Helper app, but then I started thinking, okay, these are game specific reports, so I'm gonna move these over to their respective libraries. So that way, anything that has to do with load orders, they're all canned reports. So, you just pull them up and then I'll show you an example real quick. It's a very, very simple example. Let me find it and let me see where we're at here, and I'll show you what it looks like. There's not much code to this at all. There's very little. This right here is kind of beginning the custom code, and that right there is just that's searching for a conflict in the conflict database. This is very simple stuff. That's the custom code. You click a button, and it literally it calls the search feature. This right here builds up. Let's see. Let's take a look and see what this does real quick. This builds the conflict database. And what I was looking for was where it does the plugins. That's coming up. So that builds a conflict database. I'm gonna incorporate that into the load order library, so it'll be a simple call. This is a thread that simply, this is where the load orders open. See, it just opens and you give it a list. You just give it an array list of the full plugin names, and it does the rest. And of course, once that's loaded, it builds the conflict database. And the reason it does that is because when it opens the load order, it actually opens up every single plugin using that ESX library, that DLL. It opens them up and it builds a data structure that is pretty much everything about that plugin except all the individual records inside it. So that way you can easily do a lot of reporting on it. But here's what I wanted to show you. So this is the application button. This is all common throughout all the applications. So when you go over here and you click on this plugins button here, see that? Then what happens is it literally says, oh, you clicked on a button, then let's call this applications button and let's pass the text of the button that you clicked on. And I simply check for it. That's the plugins button. because this is the text that comes from the localization file. That's the text record. 30 text, text record 30, that says that's just plugin, and that allows you to localize for different languages. And the localization works with an equal sign or a space, either one. So I just use an equal sign. I used to do it that way a long time ago. But anyways, here's the report. So this is the report. This is all it is. So basically, I generate a report based on the plugin list that I want to show the report on. There is the view, that TVW I was talking about. And then here's the form that I'm going to open right here. So technically, it's 2 library calls: open form, and then here's the report that I'm gonna open this form based on the contents of this report. And this is the title. And in the types file, it's in the form types any. You have different sections that would be called. I think this says load order. I think it says load order. Yeah, this is load order. So what you would have is in here you would have an a tag that says the exact name of the form, which is load order exclamation point, and then there is the definition for that form. So that's how kind of like how that is linked. Let me go ahead and get this centered and move this out of the way. And that's how that is linked. And without it, it'll automatically default to a list view. So if there is no form type defined, then it will default to a list view. And in the menu system, these fall under the common menu. So whenever you click on an item, it's a common menu item, unless you specifically say that, well, this particular list here is called a plugin list. That's its name. So you could go in and say, I want a menu specifically for plugins, and specifically for that list, and then it will only show the options for that list. It won't show the common. This is the common, but you can inject. So in like the form types allows you to inject a a a list or a control, in a sense, a menu that is specific to a given control, and it goes by name. So that's pretty much how that works. So you have a common menu for all items, and you can gate these behind the checks, which is, that'll be in the any. You can take a look at it. You can gate them so they only show up at certain times when certain types of information is being displayed, like plugins. See, you have the 2 plugin options. Over here, this is the same common menu, but you notice the 2 plugin options are not showing up because these are not plugins. The actual data that you see on the screen is not tagged as a plugin. It doesn't have an identifier as a plugin. This has an identifier as a plugin, therefore that allows me to gate in that menu option. And that's how you tie it in. It's real simple to do. That's all done. That you don't need to recompile the programs for all of that. Yeah, that's all done in text files, and then the programs, all the libraries and programs load these text files up. Local files or localization files, that's where you change the language. So you can go through and you can change the language. You just type in, like, if it's plugin, whatever the plugin is for the language you want, and be sure and put an identifier up there, because when the applications load, they will look up the default language for the system. So let's say you're doing like a Russian, and the acronym for that is RUS, then you would go into that and make a tag that is RUS, close the tag, and then you would put all your localizations in there. So all of them can be in the same giant localization file. They don't have to be separate. You just put different tags in there for the different languages, and that's what it uses. All right. Well, I just want to give a quick, like a really quick overview of that to show you what it looks like, because you've never seen that. That's common. That's built into the load order library, and it's common. That usually, then, like I say, the libraries do all the heavy lifting. It's mostly just the interface. And I showed you pretty much all of the code. There wasn't much code that made it custom because the libraries did all of that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call it an evening, but I'm going to upload this so you can see how you can change the views so you can see different types of data in case, that's relevant to whatever it is a person is trying to look at. And on one final note, I did want to make the reason I chose text files, configuration files and text files, and the reason there's a lot of them is I wanted everything to be self-documenting. So I wanted the text files to be transportable between applications. They can be shared between users. So if you have a filter file or configuration file, you can share that with somebody else and they can easily use it. Localizations can be shared. And also it's self-documenting. So if you wanna know what something is, you can load up, let's say, you could load up a format file, and you can see the format of the file. You can kinda see a little bit how it's laid out. You could even see version information, and everything is also included in the game's control. I've even put some variables in there that allows you to specify release dates. You can have release dates, version ranges, all kinds of really neat things. You can have maximum BSAs or BA2s, resource archives. You can define maximum plugins, and it'll warn you when it's getting close. And then if it gets over that, it'll kind of say, "Hey, you're over the limit." But yeah, there's a lot of things built in. I wanted to make it self-documenting, and so that way it kind of gets everyone on the same page, and everything is right there at their fingertips. So they can look up if they want a reference to something, they can grab a data file and or a configuration file, and the information is right there. And then I documented these programs fairly heavily. There's actually probably more documentation than there is code in many of these, but it's broken down by steps, and that makes it very, very easy to update. You can add code because you can see right where to add it, and everything is pretty sequential. It's pretty serialized from top to bottom, and it should be, hopefully be easy to follow. All right, well, I'm gonna call it a night, and I hope everybody has a great one. And I'll pack this up sometime tomorrow and upload it for everyone to play with. Hope everybody has a great evening.